Hello my fantastic friends, welcome in another watercolor tutorial. In this video, I want to talk about how to prepare colors when you use watercolors and what are the best palettes to use. So if you're interested, just watch this video. For this video, I'm going to use this very cute palette by Deluroni, which is called Aquafine, and it's a pocket set. And I will review this really soon here in my channel. So let's start. First I want to talk about the best palettes that we can use for watercolors, and we have many options, of course. And there's even an option that I don't have here to show you, but I want to talk about that because it's important to know. And that is when you use watercolors in form of a tube. So when you use tube watercolors like this, for example, because as you know, there are many different forms of watercolors. There are solid watercolors and tube watercolors and liquid watercolors. So if you use tube watercolors, you can use a piece of ceramic like a rectangular ceramic tile like this, or you can also use a plate or something like this, which is a proper professional art supply. But if you use pan watercolors like these, the best options, especially if you paint en plein air, you can use the lid of the pocket, which has compartments. As you can see, this one here has 3 compartments, and you can definitely use that as a palette. So you can use that to mix your colors. It's really handy and practical. Another option that you have is this, which is one of the most common watercolor palettes ever. You can find it pretty much everywhere in art supplies stores, and this one in particular is made in plastic, and as you can see, it has a very nice and cute flower shape. This one has 7 compartments, so it contains a lot of colors, and it's quite tall. It's like 1.5 centimeters tall, so it contains a lot of water. So what I want to show you now here is the effect that you will have if you use something like this made in plastic. So I'm putting my watercolors, I'm actually dissolving my previous watercolors which were dried, and as you can see, the liquid, it doesn't distribute on the surface, but it just kind of gathered together in just one drop. So you will have a lot of big drops of color in the compartments, and even if you put a lot of water and then a lot of color, you will just end up having big drops of color, and that kind of bothers me a lot. But so we can say that the pros of this product are that it's cheap and you can find it everywhere in the world. But unfortunately, being made of plastic, the surface tension of the water changes, so it forms drops. If you want to avoid this, you can use ceramic plates, something like this. I personally think that ceramic is the best material ever to work with watercolors. And I have this plate here, which is just a compartment plate for starters, but you can find a lot of different professional art supplies made in ceramic, even the flowery shape ones, as you can see in these images. So I highly suggest you to choose ceramic instead of plastic. I bought mine for a few euros in just a regular supermarket, and as you can see, the color distributes perfectly on the surface. It doesn't form any drops. It just distributes all over the surface. And the difference is that when you go for picking up some color, for example here on the plastic plate, the brush kind of like sucks a lot of color, and it's difficult to control because it's just one unique drop. In here, instead, you can take just a little bit of color, or you can take a lot of color, and it's up to you. You can control it, and that's the difference, and that's a huge difference to me. So these are the 3 most common options for a watercolor palette, and I repeat myself, I recommend you to use ceramic because it's much better. But now let's see how to prepare our watercolors before we start painting. So I have my pocket set here and a piece of paper, and I just want to show you something. If you take your brush and you just dip it a little bit into water and then go over the watercolor pen and just take just a little bit of color and then put it on the paper, that's what you will get. So as you can see, it's too dry, and unless you are doing a dry on dry technique, that's not what you want to obtain with watercolors. Watercolors are supposed to be transparent and distribute well on the surface. So even if you add a little bit of water like this, it won't be the best way to work with watercolors. And even if you add a little bit of water on your brush and you do the same but with more color, well, the color will be a little bit too thick, and it wouldn't resemble too much a watercolor. And plus, it's still too dry to work with. So what we have to do is to prepare our colors before we start painting, and the right technique to do that is just to take your brush and to dip it into water, and dip it well. It has to be really wet. So really take your time to do this. Just soak it into water, and then dab it a little bit on some paper, and then take your colors and then your water again, and just dip a little bit the point of the brush and go over the watercolor pen like this, and kind of massage the pen with your brush a little bit so that the color will be sucked into the brush bristles, and your brush will be loaded completely with color, if it makes sense. So keep doing that for a couple of times, better 3 times, and then add your color to your palette. So now you want to add some water, and how do you know how much water you want to add? That's a tough question because it depends from the measurements of your painting, and it depends on your experience, and with watercolors is all about experience. What you want to have here is a liquid which is very saturated in color, which is kind of liquidy and runny, but not too much, and that's really difficult to explain because it's really all about experience. But for example, here I can see that there's too much water and I need to add just a little bit of color, but I cannot explain you because it's something that I can see because I have some experience. So what I can suggest you to do is just to do some proofs for example, take a piece of paper and then try your color on the surface of the paper to see if it works for you, and if it doesn't, just add a little bit of color, and if you want it to be darker, add some color, and then try that again. So the only way that you can understand is to try and try and try again. And I also suggest you to wait until the color is completely dried to see the result, because sometimes watercolor, it seems really dark, but when it dries, it loses a lot of intensity. So as you can see, the first one, which seemed pretty much identical to the other one, now that's dried, it's completely different. So let's see that again. So take your brush and soak it into water, and then massage it onto the watercolor pen, and then put the color on the palette. Then load the brush with color 2 or 3 times, and then put it on the palette like so, and then add some water, and keep adding water until you have a very runny and liquidy stuff. And then adjust it, just adding a little bit of color more. And when you feel your color is ready, it's better to try that on a piece of paper. So you want to try that on the paper, and if you see that's still too transparent for you, add just a little bit more pigment, and then try again, and if you see that's okay, then stop there, and your color will be ready. Another tip that I can give you guys is something that I personally do, and I think is a correct way to work with watercolors. When you have to paint something, like for example this beautiful sunset landscape with poppies, etc., which will be, by the way, the subject of my next tutorial, so stay tuned for that if you want to see how to paint that. And let's take something like that, and what I do is prepare all the colors, all the basic colors, which in that case are yellows and oranges and reds and violets and green. So I prepare all my colors, and I start from the lighter ones and I go to the darker ones. So at the end you will have a pretty dirty water like this that looks super dirty, right? But I will show you that it's actually not, because if you put that on a paper, you will see that's still transparent. So you don't need to change water every moment and every single minute. So what I want to tell you here is that if you start from the lighter colors and you go towards the darker ones, you can change water less times. You can even not change the water because it's not so dirty as it seems. So why, last question, why do we have to prepare our colors before we start painting? Well, that's because when you paint with watercolors, you have a lot of problems because it's a very difficult technique and it's not easy to manage water and color and the wet surface, and the wet surface tends to dry quickly, so you don't have the time to stop and prepare your colors because of the fact that the surface will dry. So it will stain a lot and it will be a mess, so you don't have the time to stop and prepare your colors. You want to prepare them before so that you can be really quiet and relaxed and just paint your painting. So I really suggest you guys to always prepare your colors before. So my fantastic friends, this video ends here. I hope I have been clear enough, and if you have some doubts, let me know with some comments. If you like this video, please leave some thumbs up and subscribe and share, etc, etc. I will see you in my next video. Mwah! Bye bye! Ciao!